Welcome to the Holistic Homo podcast. My name is Dirk Schultz. I am the host of the Holistic Homo, and I am so excited about this episode. I am here with one of my favorite people on this planet, one of my friends for over 20 years,
Yeah.
right?
Mhm.
A man who inspires me, who motivates me, who makes me laugh. Greg McFadden. Greg McFadden is the owner of Canyons River Company, one of the premier outfitters who runs trips on the Middle Fork and Maine salmon. You also do some guiding on the Grand Canyon as well, right?
That's right. About 25 years down there.
And so when you're not in season, your shoulder season or the winter season, you are a ski guide, backcountry ski guide at Aspen Skiing Company. Uh,
Correct. Yes. Cat skiing.
Cat skiing. We'll talk a little bit about that. Greg is a very, very talented man in many ways. He is a very talented painter, and I have a couple of your pieces which I love. You can check out his art at riverpainter.com. Riverpainter.com. Greg, thank you so much for being a guest on the Holistic Homo.
Thanks for having me. It's great to be here today. Good to see you as always.
As always, we call this episode Out in the Wild, as Greg puts it, putting the out in outfitter,
That's
right?
right.
35 years in the rafting world, 17 years as a outfitter owner. Wow.
That's
I
correct.
remember when we sat and you were talking about buying the company. And
Yeah.
I've been on a few of your river trips and they're always so magical.
Thank you. Yeah. It's pretty incredible privilege what I get to do and where I get to live and experience and create joy for people in the wilderness. So I love it.
Yeah.
It's amazing
You
out
and
there.
you and your staff create such a magical space. The culture you have in your company is so welcoming. And every trip I've been to has been unique. All the staff I've run into and been associated with have been so special. So, if you wouldn't mind sharing with our listeners, how did you get involved in this lovely world of rafting?
Yeah. Well, it's kind of a longer story, but I'll shorten it into some degree. But yeah, first for your listeners too, even though you mentioned that I work and live in Colorado in the winters, I'm tuning in today from beautiful McCall, Idaho, central Idaho, and we do 6 and 12 day trips deep in the Frank Church Wilderness that are accessible. It's all roadless area, so accessible by small aircraft is how we get to the river and kind of travel throughout the state of Idaho. 2.5 million acres of wilderness right in the center of the state, and the rivers that we run pretty much dissect that wilderness right through the heart of it, through the center of this big wilderness. So pretty remote trips. And I kind of stumbled on this after meeting a friend in college and had been traveling around, always was drawn to the outdoors. Went to school in Boulder, Colorado, grew up on the East Coast, but went to school in Boulder back in the 80s and met a friend that long ago, we had pre-cell phone, pre-barely internet. We used to leave notes for each other or plan ahead on the calendar months in advance and stick to the plan, kind of. A lot of planning out in advance. And we had made a plan back then. It was like 1990. I'd graduated college and I was going to meet her for a road trip to go check out part of the West Coast and many different national parks and so forth, driving all the way down Highway 1 after a big adventure for me one summer. And we had this plan that I was going to pick her up certain time, certain place, certain date in Boise, Idaho. And I did that, showed up in Boise to grab her to head to Seattle, Washington. And there was a note literally nailed to her door that said, "Dear Greg, we're going rafting for a week. I'll explain the rest when you get here tomorrow. Your flight leaves 7 a.m., Boise Airport, gate 2. See you tomorrow." And it literally said, "Call my mom if you have any questions. Here's her number. Her name's Loretta. Call if you have any questions. She'll explain the rest, but I'll see you tomorrow. I gotta go. Love, Angela." And it was, again, my dear friend from college and all the things. And then it said, "P.S. Pack all your stuff in this bag like you're going camping for the week." I had just come back from 3 months backpacking around New Zealand and literally living out of just a rucksack. And so I was pretty used to all this and grabbed all the things I thought I would need for this long trip. Again, having no idea pre-Google all the things that were even rivers or mountains in Idaho. I'd driven from Boulder up towards Boise, which is southern Idaho, pretty potato rich with its farmland and so forth. But the center part of the state and certainly the northern part of Idaho are very mountainous once you get north of Sun Valley and the Sawtooth Mountains. And I had no idea that any of that was there. Anyway, showed up the next morning, got on this flight, 7 a.m., and flew across all of central Idaho. And about an hour and a half later, I landed at a little airport and took a shuttle into the wilderness. And my friend Angela was there and ran up and was, I can't believe that you made it. And again, this was like pre-cell phone. There was no way we could chat with each other all these months in advance. And anyway, it turns out it was a 6-day, 5-night river rafting trip down the main salmon here in central Idaho. And it was also a food and wine culinary trip, my first trip I ever did. So again, having lived out of a backpack for the summer and living pretty sparsely, this was like a deluxe kind of like car camping on steroids with everything we brought. And they had brought 120 bottles of wine for 20
You were
people
sold.
for 5 nights. Yeah, I was just like, what? This is to go camping or to go in the wilderness like this was unbelievable. We had a sommelier and stemware and all these things. And yeah, they at the last minute they needed another guide because they had brought so much wine. They needed a whole nother boat for more wine. So
That's a good trip.
yeah, long story short is I wound up doing this trip and we finished the trip and then did our little road trip and went to national parks and went to a bunch of campuses to think about going to grad school and tour those. And every campus I walked around was like, all I was hearing was the river still in my
Wow.
ear and kind of being drawn back. So I eventually applied to the owners who happened to be on that wine tasting trip. And so many years ago, 30 plus years ago, and pretty much asked them for a job. And they were like, Greg, you were great in the kitchen. You were wonderful with the people. This seemed like you were really happy and something that, you're really drawn to, but you really don't know jack about rowing or how to navigate a raft in whitewater. So if you're serious, go get some experience and stay in touch. And so I went at the end of that summer, went up and took a gap year, moved to the mountains for 1 year. Of course, that was 35 plus years ago in my gap year still. And anyway, wound up getting a job with a river outfitter locally, did some day trips and stayed in touch with those owners. And literally every month for 3 years, sent them
Wow.
a letter to say, hey, remember me? I still would love to work for you in Idaho. And couldn't stop thinking about that river. And eventually they caved and asked me to come up and do a training trip and hired me in about 1993, 1994. And that river trip changed my life because that is now the company I own that I've been the owner for 17 years, the same one that I started off with by accident, taking that right-hand turn off of I-84 just to pick up a friend on a road trip. And here I am today, so many years later, so many decades later. So
Okay.
yeah,
It's such a crazy thing how saying yes to one thing just changes the course of your life,
yeah,
right? And like you said, before cell phones, before any of that, before Google, you just made these plans and you showed up. And from what I hear is the impact of that trip with her changed the trajectory of your life, right?
100%. Yeah.
Yeah. And
It just was also just like living out there with a really intentional sort of community. Granted, it was maybe based around food and wine for that trip, but just sort of realizing how you could live multiple days in the wilderness rather richly with
yeah.
rafting and what that provides with delicious meals and just kind of pretty regally enjoying camping in that way. In addition to incredible whitewater and scenery and wildlife
Wow.
and everything that just blew my mind in that way was just very eye-opening. And it wasn't something, again, this was like pre-internet searching, and I just didn't even know people did multi-day river trip. I knew people did rafting trips, but it wasn't on my radar at that point back in the late 80s, early 90s that people were doing that for multiple days. And it still was relatively newer sport or newer adventure travel kind of way in the really rubber rafts and all of that kind of came out of post-war, and then it took a while for that to really catch on in the recreation. And but permitting happened in the 60s, so it really wasn't that far along in the late 80s to have stumbled into this, maybe 20 years into the industry. So yeah, it was amazing.
And, and I've been on that food and wine trip and it is amazing. It is,
Yeah.
it is amazing. Were you out at the time when you took your first?
No, and I think that harkens back to what I was just saying about like intentional community or living with community. I think at the
Right.
time, being a gay man that was like post mid 80s, the height of AIDS, all of the fear that we had around, even within ourselves,
Yeah.
around everything. And at a pretty formative age, late teens or college age, and then into my early 20s, and being really driven by being in the outdoors and going to school in Boulder, where it was pretty hippie forward, and following the Dead for a little while, like all of the things that were unfolding at that time
Right.
period in those ways that were what I was drawn towards, that weren't really these urban cityscapes where our communities as gay men were really defined. Created seeing a community that was, like I say, somewhat intentional and just had this huge level of trust for running whitewater and living together in the wilderness, but still doing it in a pretty posh way, was just kind of put a bunch of things together for me. I'd always had a love of the mountains since I was a little kid, but I grew up on the East Coast and grew up as a water kid on the Chesapeake Bay. And when I put water and the mountains together through rafting and being able to travel through the mountains on water, it just made all the sense in the world to me. And I was really just drawn by it. I didn't really think out my dating life for this particular culture that drew me in, but I knew my heart was with it and I just kept following it. Just the more I was on the river, the more I loved it. And I didn't realize how sparse maybe it would be for gay men to be any part of this. And
Right.
the company that I first showed up with was really welcoming to me, and I was still coming into my own at the time. My family wasn't exactly the most supportive of where I was at, but out there again, it's like it's life without mirrors. You're not thinking
Mm,
about who you are. You're just sinking
yeah.
to the experience, and again, you just feel that huge sense of community in what you're achieving every day, and you're in the moment. You're not worried about whitewater's like the ultimate zen. You are really present when you're in whitewater, and that affects your whole experience of how you are in conversations with people out there, how you sleep under the stars, how you eat, how you just rise with the sun, and all of the things that are the beautiful moments of river travel. And it just spoke to me, and it gave me a sense of belonging, I think. And also not really so concentrated on trying to navigate my way through, I guess maybe what at the time was kind of scary in gay culture, and as a young gay person also, and just figuring out where to fit in that wasn't an urban landscape as well. And
Well,
so,
and not the stereotypical as we were growing up, what a gay man would be doing.
yeah, that too. It's just spoke to what I just really loved, and then I just sort of followed that. Again, I didn't really think through my dating life and the limit of interaction with other gay men at that point for a long time, but have kind of helped to pave a little bit of road to change that over these decades, and in being involved in this part of the outdoor industry and eventually becoming an owner. And now we, have been hosting queer community, gay men's, women's trips, all of the above. We have non-binary and queer guides, trans guides that work for me too. So it's a whole new ball game out there with these next generations, and it feels like kind of a bright future for some of the inclusivity that in these public lands and these spaces that should be enjoyed by, we all are a part of making them happen, from our everyone who pays taxes anyway, and everyone who lives in this country. So it's the access to change that access and see this happen over so many decades has been a really rewarding thing. At the time, I had no idea I was stepping into that
Right.
platform or that place to maybe change part of that narrative for, what we're just still even starting to see today. It's still, like I said, I worked down in Grand Canyon as well for 25 years, and I think the last 20, I literally have been the only gay man that's been out down there. That was a whole nother realm and a different side of level of, even for women, it was hard to break into the current down there in a way, you know what I mean? And had its own lengthy time period for even women to be accepted as taken seriously as boatmen down in Grand Canyon. So it was a whole thing to show up there when I did, kind of late 90s, mid 90s as well, and started rowing down there. So anyway,
And
yeah,
you,
it's been a journey on all that. And so it's,
well, it's been a beautiful journey to witness as your friend, and to see the again the culture that you are creating in the safe space that you and your staff creates in the backcountry. And as you mentioned, speaking from my own experience, going on these trips with you, it's always fun. It's always different. I love the fact that you can unplug, you can exhale and get into the rhythm of the river, right? And kind of, I want to like shed all of society's stuff, all the bullshit, and get back into touch with nature and yourself. Tony and I were talking about who were on the we were on the trip 2024, the LGBTQ plus trip, and he had never done anything like that, and it was fun to experience it through someone who was new to the river running. So it was a lot of fun, and it was great to see how people choose to step into that experience, right? It's even though it is a collective experience going down the river, it's an individual internal experience as well. And it's one that I cherish. It's one that we've done many times, but it's so amazing to reconnect with yourself and nature and our community.
Yeah, they're very special trips when we're able to kind of again create that really intentional community out there and create a different access and a different experience that a lot of people, I mean, in general, for all the public that we host out there, but to have this extra where we're able to really be authentic to who we are and that we have a place out there and that we're opening a few other doors for people to experience that and in those communities that's different than what we're used to in the bar scene or just other ways, even that we even like hiking groups or whatever, there's something very special about running rivers that are very humbling. I always
Yeah.
say whitewater's the ultimate zen. You don't think about anything else when you're running a rapid or when you're dropping in down a beautiful glassy tongue into a big piece of whitewater that
Right.
it's you and the river and that's it. And you're just really present in that way. And I think that infuses again across the whole trip and yeah, it just creates a bond where you're achieving kind of your sort of triumphs in a day, but you're really
Mm.
supported by one another because it's not something you really do by yourself. It's not that kind of a sport. And whitewater is for real. So the river doesn't care. There's a lot of humility that comes in with that. And it all just winds up being just such beautiful metaphors to what our life is. And there's nothing more kind of metaphoric than how the river runs and how it grows and how it swirls and stagnates and changes and all of the things that happen and it's different and we're out running free flowing rivers so we
Yeah.
see it's different every week for us so and we've done trips I mean we do trips all the way from June till mid-September but we've slated different times of the season for our queer community trips too and lately it's been these high water trips which is incredible. Everything's blossoming. It's all the wildflowers are out, the waterfalls are pumping, and there's a
Yeah.
lot of daylight, so we can just really fill the days. It's amazing. So yeah, it's incredible. And people don't always see that kind of natural flowing river. It's glory like that. So it's pretty cool too.
Well, and to your point too, I mean, being present, you either are or you're not, right? The river doesn't care, but the river is going to make sure that you're present in that moment.
Yeah.
It's a great way, it's a great metaphor, having your life flow like a river. And it's fun to watch people, like I said, evolve as the trip goes on. In the connections and the experiences that you have together. It's such a beautiful thing. And when you wake up, it, no one's worried about their cell phones. No one's worried about deadlines. They get into river time. And it's so beautiful to experience and watch everybody have their own experience.
Yeah, it really is. And in this day and age, we're just so bombarded by communication and dopamine hits from all of the things that social media leads us to, where hours of your day can go
Yeah.
by and it's easy to do that or minutes of your day even that we just succumb to all of this information and so to it's kind of a reboot like I say it's almost like stepping back in time a little bit and when you do give your permission to go to these places it can be an adjustment for a day or two for some people that are really connected really plugged in their jobs and their worlds
Sure.
so to have this length of time 5 nights 6 days it's kind of like just the right amount of time that people really sink into it and for those of us who've grown up like the stories I was saying, like pre-cell phone, pre all these things we know, but we're also seeing generations today that have never been unplugged and they're well into their 20s by now.
Right.
They're adults. So to experience that for the first time is also like, wow, it's an epiphany to at the end of a trip, how people can walk away like looking younger, being more radiant, being more, I don't know. It's just like I call it the river glow. I'll tell people when they get off that, your friends will notice and it's like true every time. Everyone's like, "Oh my God, you look amazing. What did you just do?"
Yeah.
And going and unplugging and plugging in with this community and with each other in that way, but also just being so immersed in nature and so humbled by these landscapes and these places and this experience is it's kind of hard to describe.
Yeah, and it's a great experience, and it's like I said, it's always different. And like well, you mentioned, you come off the river. My experience has been it takes a day to get back into like regular life. You're like, whoa,
Yeah.
whoa, whoa, whoa. Wait, I want to go back there. I want to go back on the river,
Yeah.
right? And like you said, you have that river glow, and your friends are like, hey, what spa did you go to? I want to go.
Yeah, exactly. I know people are like, oh, did you go to Hawaii? What's going on? You look so great. And wilderness, running rivers and, running whitewater and sleeping on the beach and watching the stars and just all of the things that it's funny.
And the
It's,
costume bag.
and yeah, we bring a little flair. We keep Idaho colorful.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
yeah.
you can still have the glitter
Yeah.
on
I
the
mean,
river,
it
right?
is dinner parties every night. So yeah, yeah. It's a good time in those celebratory regards, additionally. And it's cool because as the trip is pretty exciting and the whitewater's pretty big in this as the snow runs off, eventually it does calm in some ways through the sunny months of July and August. And our September trips are great too. They're a little more calm, a little bit beachier, big beaches and things like that. And the water's a bit warmer and stuff like that. So there's a little something for everyone, no matter what your level of doing this is. But like I say, the access that we've provided, we see a lot of people, whether it's our queer community trips or other trips that we are also doing that are providing some other different social outlets for access to just all the trips that we advertise and do and stewarding the general public. We really have seen a thread of a mix of people and levels and experience coming on all our trips with us and ages and genders and all of the other things these days. So, it used to be that we had to do these trips as specifically as gay men
Right.
or queer communities to even feel safe into these places. But now the trips that we have kind of just sort of waving that flag here a little bit in Idaho is we don't have to have all of our trips are really threaded with just a whole myriad of different types of people and families with kids that are queer or same sex couples who have had weddings out there in our normal trips. It doesn't have to be specialty trips anymore. And that was kind of the goal all along, is to like see if we can sort of bring this whole quilt together. And of course we wind up with a lot of like-minded people with what we're doing, but it's nice to see that that's changed. And then the guides as well over time, these next generations, it's nice to have the authenticity of actual queer guides who work for us that are simply out there and a part of this industry now. Yeah.
And you're touching on on the guides, and you can also, if someone wanted to create their own theme trip, they can contact you guys and do that, right?
Oh yeah, yeah. We do all kinds of
Mm.
a lot of our trips are charter trips anyway. So we see some guests will come maybe on one of our trips that might be mixed groups or whatever. And then we get almost some years over 65%. Sometimes we have of return guests who come back simply because the crazier the world gets, the more you want to go unplug from it in some ways. But we also see a lot of charter groups. So families and friends that come together. Our groups are about 20 people total. So it doesn't take too many families or groups of friends to kind of parse that together. And our trips are limited. We only do about 25 trips, 25 week-long trips in a summer of either the Middle Fork or the main salmon. So we sell trips right now into 2027 and we'll release our 2028 dates this
Wow.
fall. People do plan ahead on these longer adventures. And again, we offer 6 or 12 days. So yeah, it takes a little while to plan those style, but yeah, we're seeing all kinds of things. And then we do a lot of other kind of variety of trips too, whether it's other sort of access forward trips. So we've been working with some of the different tribes here and we're hoping to host a trip with Pandion next year, which is Nez Perce Youth, getting back to kind of their main origin place
Awesome.
and be able to host that. We also have hosted all kinds of different specialty trips like yoga trips or different. We're doing a trip coming up soon that's kind of young entrepreneurs coming together. So it's more like or almost like an ideas fest for young entrepreneurs that are starting their businesses or that are flourishing in their businesses or whatever, but just go unplug. That again is some of these generations that haven't really ever unplugged. So, and then kind of be able to reboot on yourself, sort of like a retreat in a way for your business and how to further your own self and your own journey through running rivers together and leaning into that specific. And then we've also been working a lot with some other BIPOC groups. I sit on a board called the BIPOC Outdoor Collective based out of Atlanta. And
Nice.
we work with folks of color to also start having that a little bit more representational in the outdoors, certainly in the whitewater world, and certainly regionally in some of the places we live out west, places like Idaho or Wyoming or these other places that really just don't have a whole lot of different ethnicities, even in the larger cities that are in these small populous states. So we've really reached out on that front in the last few years after I kind of realized we're going to stand on levels of inclusion. We really need to broaden our scope even more. So, Idaho's its own challenge in some ways regionally, but it's incredibly beautiful landscapes, and to be able to increase the access for all of these is amazing. And trips you've been on as well, even just the queer community trip with our dear friend Sally. We have folks who are also,
Yeah.
have some different ableism things. So she was on the trip with you last year and is
Yes.
paraplegic, and
Yep.
it's pretty cool to be running down the river and see a wheelchair strapped on the back of one of our boats for somebody that's pretty savvy with whitewater. She had been a kayaker for a long time, and as she's getting a little older, still wanted to experience doing some trips. And we've taken Sally about 10 different years out there, and it's
That's
wonderful.
awesome.
So we're really trying to include everyone as best we can with our level and our platform of inclusion in what we do. So yeah.
And you're also providing a opportunity for the guides, LGBTQ plus guides. There may not have ever been an outfitter, or you're the only gay owned outfitter in the
Yeah,
West.
definitely in the state of Idaho. And I would say in the West, certainly the only gay owned. There may be some other folks, some ladies or so forth that may out of California, or I'm not sure, but certainly for the longest amount of time. And I hope that is changing. I don't want to misspeak in case as things are shifting across the country. And
Right.
I stay pretty active with it in our industry and so forth, and have pretty good tabs on how that's going. But yeah, we've definitely kind of cornered that market early, just in our own authenticity of who I am, and then who was attracted to come work for us and further their skills. And some of our guides have started as guests and been so inspired by the guides that we have, just like I did, have gone back, done day trips or learned how to kayak or done whatever they've done on their journeys, and then eventually wound up working for us. So it's pretty cool to see it all blossom in the way that I really had no idea when I was, 20 years old, driving on I-84 and making that right-hand turn just to pick up a friend, and wound up doing that
Well,
trip.
well, again, and you're creating a space for not just your guests, but the guides to live authentically and work in a
Yeah,
space, in a place that they can be themselves.
yeah,
Um, and in turn, that gives the guests permission to kind of really unplug and really live authentically on the river, which they can take into their life.
yeah, absolutely. And even I've had guests before who have never really, we tend to stay sometimes clustered in our own likeness of
Yeah.
people. And that can be true even in queer communities and stuff. And so just to live a week with somebody who is gay or non-binary, they may now never, it may not be in their circle of friends to have that, but the trust that happens, especially from the moment that you show up for what you're doing out there and giving to our guests give a lot of trust right away to our guides, and they already build a huge trust with each other. And that's reciprocal to our guests too, that they'll participate in all the ways that we can do this safely. And class 3-4 whitewater is not to be,
No joke.
it's not taken lightly. Yeah. So especially on a free flowing river. So it's an amazing experience. And I wish there were everyone could enjoy a river trip, because I think it's what could really change the world, is when we really
Yeah. Yeah.
take off all those things, live without mirrors, and lean into each other, and just live in a kind of how we're supposed to live alongside each other. So
And one of my favorite things too is after the first day, people kind of shed their regular life and get into the rhythm of the river is connection, right? Authentic connection. It's not, no one's being distracted. People connect around the fire. People connect around a meal. People connect on the boat. Some of my favorite conversations have been in those duckies,
yeah,
little duckies with one of your river guides. We're floating down the river and we're having this in-depth conversation about life. And I love, and I'm looking around like, where the hell am I? And why don't we have more of this? Right.
yeah,
And being on one of those trips can teach a lot of people how to just live simply, right? And connect and the power of our community. And I've said this to you many times. One of my favorite things is to watch that rainbow flag that you all put up. They'll pick a branch from off the shore and they'll put the rainbow flag on and prop it up in one of the boats. And it's usually one of the last boats to come through the rapids. And I always get emotional when I see that rainbow flag flapping in the wind as it's coming through the rapids. I'm like, this is fucking beautiful. It's
yeah,
such a beautiful thing. And look at these people I'm surrounded with. So, yeah, it's an amazing thing that you've created and you continue to build.
yeah. Thank you. It's amazing to see it all come to fruition, and to have built it in the likeness of trying to better the world a little bit, and yeah, create those really intentional communities
Yeah,
without the distraction of what happens in this world. That's the beauty, is we're away from those distractions, and we know which way we're going. You know what I mean? The river tells us that. We
yeah,
may not know what's around the corner as far as how our guests experience the trips, but we're all in it together and moving at the same pace. And so that's just a beautiful thing in its own likeness of that metaphor. It's like, wow, if only the world was moving at the same pace sometimes, and we were all on the same page, knowing we were going to the same place, it might feel a little easier. So
right.
yeah, all of those kind of things fold into how we live and how we connect and how we are as truly a community and as a people. It's pretty cool.
Any big ahas or pleasant surprises on this journey that you've been on with the being an owner of an outfitter?
Yeah, I mean, I kind of sunk into things pretty heavily. I also stay pretty active on the Hill in Washington, D.C. So that's why when I'm like, oh my God,
Yeah,
it's crazy, I am referring to politics and all
yeah,
of those
right,
things. And it takes a lot of extra work to fight for these public lands, fight for these spaces. And I've sunk my heels into that world as well, and sit as the vice president for America Outdoors, which is kind of our industry trade organization that we lobby on the Hill for river protections, for public lands, and certainly for recreation, and from an economic lens all the way down to labor, to just all of the different things that involve running businesses like this with federal permits and so forth as well. So it's a lot to navigate within the silos of all the agencies that monitor, oversee these different stretches of river or wild and scenic places or public lands. And it takes, I think the aha for me is like, wow, this really takes work.
yeah,
It's important to like not just lean into other people to do that work as well. So if it is having been such a like giving back to the river itself in that way has been incredibly rewarding for me. And it's a tough one right now. There's things that we might have taken for granted or thought everyone would just be 100% behind, but these places take love, they take care, they take stewardship, and they need our voices to keep for the next generations of young queer river guides and people who deserve to be out and enjoying these incredible experiences, and saving them from being completely even plugged in, and all kinds of, there's so many different
right.
directions right now that take effort and conversation and love towards stewardship too. So I think that was a bigger piece that I didn't necessarily, when I took that right hand turn and did this food and wine trip, those things didn't occur to me at that point, whether it was the social justice side of it, whether it was the political side and the rallying cries of public lands and wild and scenic rivers. And and these precious spaces that have to be protected to all of the things, and then all of the logistics that it takes to fly in and feed people for for days and days on end. So there was a lot that you show up for, but there's a lot behind the scenes
and
in
scenes.
what it takes to get you there in the first place and keep that going. So we're fighting the good fight to continue that, and have really, our guides are all on board in how they give back in all of their own ways, from regional, local levels to showing up on Capitol Hill and meeting with our congressmen and congresspeople and senators to talk about these issues. So it's a,
And you've been doing that for a number of years, right?
yeah, I've been going to the Hill for probably close to 15 years. And we were just able to have passed the Explore Act last December, which was a huge win for the outdoor industry. And even recently, some of the folks that we've met with that understand the economic impact that recreation has these days and so forth, even two pretty conservative senators from Idaho just recently came out supporting our public lands and keeping them in place and not selling those off just in the last couple of days. So our
Awesome.
message is received in some ways, and it doesn't necessarily, the outdoors might be the one thing that we maybe can all agree on, no matter, maybe you're doing different things there in the outdoors, but it's something that we as proud Americans could be the most proud of, is some of these remarkable landscapes that deserve to be passed on from generation to generation, to go outside and do whatever it is that you love, whether it's ATVing and shooting guns, or whether it's running rivers and hiking and dancing among wildflowers, whatever it might be. But everyone
All
needs
is
to be
good.
outside, and it's one thing that brings us all together. So
Is that your passion project, would you say?
I think it's one of many, you know what I mean? I
You
think
have a lot.
that, yeah, I have a lot going on in those fronts. And there's other sides of me from the creative side too. I think we all need that creative outlet, whatever it is, and harnessing that too, and making that emboldened in your life to use the creative side of what we have too. So my paintings and things like that are also really important to what I do, and making sure the stories are told kind of, and art is another part of what I do in that front. But yeah, definitely the
And
passion projects are far and wide, but definitely involve some pretty big things, and that I didn't realize would be so important at this point
yeah.
in the world.
Well, I appreciate what you're doing on Capitol Hill. And if someone's interested, how can they learn more and get involved?
Right on our homepage, we talk a lot about on canyonsrivercompany.com or canyonsinc.com. You can find us, and we talk about some of the different projects that we're doing and working with, whether it's, we've also done other nonprofit work too, with like First Descents, which is young adults who are kayaking and living with cancer, to some vets programs as well. So we've taken disabled veterans down the river and stuff like that. So we have lots of projects that we talk about on our website, the things that we've been doing. As far as some of the industry stuff as well, places like America Outdoors, Idaho Outfitters and Guides Association, which are all .org associations, in that way can also give you some better tips on what's going on in the industry. And then as far as river advocacy, things like American Rivers, Idaho Whitewater United, there's other places, or Idaho Rivers United, donating to those causes in any way you can. Save the South Fork is another one here locally. So there's just a lot going on those fronts to be involved with. And we have some links within our website too, if you're really interested in hearing more about what we're doing as a company on those
Awesome.
fronts. Yeah.
Yeah, and we'll include those for the listener on this podcast description. The thing you mentioned about being creative with the M3 method, feeding yourself off the plate, we believe is really as important as the food that you put on your plate. How do you feed your life off the plate? And being on these trips with you has been one way that I feed my life. You mentioned creativity. One of my favorite things on the trips is, and you've allowed me to tag along, is when you split off and you go and find a spot, find a scene, find something on the river that you're going to paint, and you take river water from that spot and you go and do a watercolor. Do you want to tell more about that? Because
Yeah.
I have a couple of them which I love.
Yeah. So I think just being again in sort of these intentional communities, being in nature, all these things sort of and being unplugged in some ways, you start to remember, like, music comes into your head and you're when you are away from it for a little bit. And a lot of our guides are musicians, a lot of guests who show up are musicians and so forth. But I'm a painter myself, and so if I can find time while I'm on the river to capture a scene, I'm a landscape painter and so forth. I paint with the water of the site, and sometimes the soils and things like that I'll use and mix to create my paints themselves. So from there, I have a little gallery here in McCall, and we'll show my art and stuff here as well. But it's just a way to kind of really, it's sort of this ritual of being able to sit for a minute with the river and sort of honor it and take it in. And it's too complicated to ever imagine you could be that's why I love watercolor. It kind of does its own thing. And so I don't have time to be super specific in the way that I paint, but it captures the essence of the place, and it allows me to say thank you or give it gratitude as I'm doing it. And I can be in this zone that we all find ourselves in the creative spaces where you kind of travel into that space of your mind working in that way, whether it's playing music, and you get this next level or consciousness that we have that is still present in that space too. So yeah, I'm a big advocate of that's always a question I have for our guests, it's like digging in on people is what's your creative outlet? And I think it tells a story about each of us of how we harness that or whatever it is. And a lot of people are like, oh no, I don't have any creative outlet or something. We all cook, we all do something, or it doesn't have to be. Sometimes it's people don't realize how creative they are in their own way. So it opens a cool dialogue with that. And it inspires other people to maybe pull out some paints or do whatever they're going to do, or just go that route too. And I've had many guides or even some guests too that hadn't painted in years and then came back to it, and then later sent me letters that they've got back into it and they're having a show or whatever it might be. So it's kind of cool. I think we inspire each other in a lot of ways through the experience, and that certainly goes in the creative side as well. So
Yeah. And one thing that the river does for me, I mean, nature in general is my therapy. It's the way that I love to reconnect. And you and your staff and the river do that in such a magical way. I hope more and more people take time to invest in themselves and explore these trips because they are so amazing, and the memories that you create, and the side of you that shows up that you may have thought was lost forever is a beautiful thing. It's
yeah,
fun to reconnect. It's fun to reconnect with ourselves. And I love being on the river, and some of the downloads, intuitive downloads that you gain are really, really beautiful and kind of inspiring that move you into a different direction when you get off the river.
yeah, absolutely. And along with that, like there's these pensive moments and these places like it hits you over the head with, oh my God, it gives you a chance to think about your life and what you are doing with it, and be faced sometimes with what people can feel maybe at that moment, feel like a life or death experience in some ways, or achieving it through a big whitewater that
Yeah.
they didn't swim and they conquered through and they achieved big goals in those ways. And so I think in other ways, it also threads those experiences with being allowed to be really playful, and
Yes.
so we sometimes take ourselves so seriously, even when we work out, you know what I mean, which should feel somewhat playful in some ways, but we get so regimented. And the beauty of the river is like, it might be plan A, and you might think you're going to do this certain routine, but turns out it's Bowman once said, it's the greatest dance you'll ever know. You're just not leading. So
Yes.
it's to have that sort of surrender. And those of us who own businesses or blah, 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 or like feel very regimented in our lives and like to be in control, it's a place where you are like to think you're in control, but you're really working with the thing that's in control to achieve what you feel like is control. But in the end, the river doesn't care. And so that's, I think, another beautiful thing that happens, and in our humility and just in sort of our humanity in that way through those experiences, that is pretty rewarding for people beyond just the magnificent scenery and just the other things that just kind of blow your mind in these spaces out there. So yeah.
So being in the outdoor industry in general, because I've been there myself as a gay man, hasn't always been easy or accepting or felt good. Have you had any issues as a gay owned outfitter? Any issues on the rivers?
I mean, here in central Idaho, no.
No.
No, I think when I first showed up at the outfitters table, years ago, 15, 16, 17 years ago, I had earned my place. I'd been guiding there. I kind of had this
Sure.
like, it's like the American dream. I took the strip, by accident, wound up like loving it, doing the thing, working hard, becoming a painter, saving my tips, doing all the things, eventually finding someone who believed in me, helped me buy a business that I loved. And there it is. So, and here I am today as this business owner here on this beautiful American treasure of a landscape and river. And so I think I kind of earned my place in some ways, but of course, there's a big cowboy culture and there's a sort of Idaho's known for all kinds of things that are maybe don't seem very approachable, of course, as a queer person too. So, but that didn't matter to me because I had such a love for the river and I wasn't going to run the same types of trips as these other folks. And our inclusive and sort of like really family welcoming feeling in a empathetic way as well towards just again that sense of trust in this it doesn't matter. And when we're all out there together, even if we have different political beliefs or with other outfitters that certainly don't live their lives the way that I do or whatever, we're all in it together. So we've helped each other. I've built relationships and crossed many spectrums of all of those things in situations where we work together to do this. And I work with other outfitters on the hill that are very different too. But it's again, the outdoors is something that can really, I think, break through a lot of that. And we have to be bold to show up there too.
Yeah.
So I guess again, I didn't think through that. I didn't think through the dating game. I didn't think through a lot of things that, of where I am now when it came down to it. But my greatest love is still running these rivers and doing these things. So I've had some experience. I worked on a Grand Canyon too, and I remember finishing a trip years ago in Grand Canyon. This older Grand Canyon guide who was like well into his 70s at the end of the trip, who barely gave me the time of day, and just I don't know, was throwing us doing the things. It's a very misogynistic historical community down there. It's changed a lot in the last few years due to some amazing outfitters down there that have broadened the message and the scope of the types of people that show up there. But it still is. It was the high macho river to do, and it still can be
Sure.
conceived that, or perceived that way in lots of ways. And this one, anyway, 75-year-old or so, had worked down there a long time. And he was like, Greg, I just want to and I showed up loud and proud, all pink, white sunglasses. My first trip guiding there, I was putting it out. I wasn't trying to hide anything. And it was time for us to show up there. And I was a good boatman, and I still am a good boatman. And he was at the end of the trip, he goes, I just want you to know I've never met a gay person, but you've really changed my lens on what that feels like. And I would follow you down any rapid. I would follow you anywhere on a river. So that was amazing. And I wasn't expecting him to say that. And I think just that little moment changed that. But I certainly was terrified to engage in conversation with him this was like a 16-day trip or so that I was
Sure.
rowing. It wasn't the warmest feeling through the years, some of this, but at the same time, a lot of women have found their way in this industry too. And in other ways, I've been able to elevate that, and we have more women that work for us than men, which is also unique here in Idaho in some ways. So
Oh, that's great.
yeah, it's great. So yeah, there were some surprises along the ways on both sides of that coin. And the other ones, you just like life, you have to just persevere and move on from realize we're still doing it and we're doing it well. So yeah.
Yeah. You're doing it very well. And the impact you have, well, on me and the guests and the guides, it's something to be proud of. It's something to be proud of.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's very impressive and inspiring.
Thank you. It's amazing. And it's always fun to have you out there, of course, and Dave, and from the honeymoon times to all the repeat offenders and coming
Well,
back and bringing all of your awesome friends as well from California and Colorado and beyond. So it's been
yeah,
awesome.
it's always fun. It's always different. And 2026 plan.
2026.
Yeah.
Yes. I love it.
So with at the Holistic Homo, our mission is to empower others to live bold. What empowers you to live bold?
What empowers me to live bold? I think just waking up to a passion that you want to, you know, keep moving with, even on the hard days, and even when it's can beat you down a little bit from all of the things that life can do. I think just waking up and knowing you are making a difference and loving what you do and who you do that with and creating a community that I've been able to foster and build into its own. It's had its tough times, as we know, COVID, all of the things. There's lots of
Right.
things through this journey, but it feels great now, 35 years into this industry, to look back and look at my management team and kids that I've known since they were born now that are, well into their 20s, that are guiding for me these days, and see their hope and their eagerness to steward these rivers and preserve them and protect them, and to stand up for all kinds of people to be able to access them. I think no matter whether we have plenty of straight guides too, and guides who are married with kids and all of the other things too, but it's just a beautiful breath of humanity to see that come alive, and it helps me hop up every day and go back to doing the things, because it can have its own challenges in all the ways, but it feels good. We've
Yeah.
built these days.
I can understand the challenges, but you do such a beautiful job at navigating the river, and the culture you've created is beautiful. What's next for you?
What's next? I am trying to lean into my art a little bit more. I have an art opening
Awesome.
in Aspen this September 28th
Hey,
at the Aspen Chapel. So trying to show some more art there. Of course, I'm still ski guiding there in the winters, and I'll continue to do that for a long time. I'm not ready to hang my hat here in the outfitting world for a number of years still. So
good.
still moving forward with that. And again, it's kind of some of our next access is working more with tribal youth here. And so those are on the table, and returning to Washington at least a few times a year to stand up for rivers and doing the things is always there. And I have an art show in Minnesota next year too. I think the COVID years and all the other things, you had to kind of put your creativity on the back burner. So it's nice to see that sort of being hearkened again to be a bigger part of my life with the creative
Good.
side of things too.
Good. I look forward to seeing that. Is there anything else you want the listeners to know about you or canyons?
I think, yeah, just come see us. It's amazing. I think one river trip at a time where we could really change the world. And it's an incredible experience that I'd recommend for anyone. And yeah, come see us if you're in Aspen or around this winter. I'd love to say hi if you're curious about this and all the other things. And certainly look forward to seeing you on the river again. Things are
How do,
great.
how do people get in contact with you and or reach you?
Either through our canyonsinc.com, again, Canyons River Company. Riverpainter.com is my art site as well. And then I work for Aspen Skiing Corporation in the winter at Aspen Mountain Powder Tours, which is the cat skiing on the backside of Ajax. So that's where I am. And I do some trips with Grand Canyon in the fall, usually just one trip a year with ASRA, which is Arizona River Adventures. So
Nice.
those are all the places where you can hunt me down a little bit. But yeah, you can always just shoot us a little say hi at the top, or contact us off our website at Canyons River Company.
Awesome. And you were on another podcast, and would you share a little bit about that, because it was amazing podcast?
Yeah, it's I think 47th episode of
Yeah.
what's called the Discomfort Zone by Anna Levesque. Anna was a past whitewater champion freestyle kayaker that represented Canada in the worlds, and she has a pretty big podcast again called the Discomfort Zone that talks about all the ways that especially how we run whitewater and how that relates to our lives, and
Yeah.
talks about a lot of industry leaders there, and has a pretty big following there. We're working with Anna and doing a trip in 2027 with she and her husband, Andrew, more kayaker specific and yoga specific trip
Nice.
on the Middle Fork and Maine, doing all 12 days. So yeah.
It's a great podcast. Give it a listen. And Anna, if you're listening, I want to have you on the Holistic Homo. So, Gregory, my badass friend, thank you so, so much for being part of the Holistic Homo podcast.
Thank
And
you.
listeners, thank you for listening, and keep tuned in for more episodes of the Holistic Homo. Until next time, take care.
Cheers.